Hey man,
Hi, Frode.
let's see, the video was none. So let's get rid of the note taker. I've tried to remove it before. It's from a guy who was in the community. He's a good guy, nothing wrong with him, but
Right.
this note taker is here a lot more than he is. So,
Yeah, I wonder
right.
how that works
I have so
automatic.
I don't take up the main session. Yeah, we missed you last week. You're okay, right?
Yeah, I'm fine. hmm
Okay, good. Yeah, we can't all go to all sessions, so nothing wrong with that. Okay, hang on. Here's the meeting chat for a chat we didn't have. Get that out of the way. I, I, yeah, I had the weirdest kind of AI thing the other day with Vespa, the mopeds.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting a build here of knowledge base. So yeah, I'm moving everything, almost everything across to knowledge base because there were
What's that?
so many apps like digital letters, augmented
Yeah.
library, origami text. So now knowledge base will be literally the space for these different things. Today I reworked how it takes in transcripts from our meetings as well as transcripts with AI chats.
Okay, good.
So that's kind of fun.
So you envision it as one app for everything we're doing, or
It,
what?
it, it just can get really bitty. Not one app for everything. So I look, hang on, it's okay. It did a thing. I'm just going to build it. More of a gathering place app.
Right.
So absolutely not everything. So for instance, hang on, I've got to test this before I can
Yeah,
show
do
you.
what you need to do.
No. It's about what is it doing? Open source. No, that is not the source. I'm so excited to show you this, but it's got to work. Let's just liquid view. It's not a liquid view.
Hey,
F's sake. Hey,
it's always when you demo it to someone else, demo it to your boss, it's going to fail. That's the rule, right?
I may not have built the app. That may be a problem. Yeah, no, exactly. And in this, you guys are definitely my boss.
Yeah,
Hang on, just trying to close enough the ship. Oh my gosh, I got 3 copies of knowledge base running. That's not what we need.
good.
How are you, Peter?
It's the being healthy and hot here in North Carolina. So, and no, not enough rain.
Yeah, we have that here as well. It's a
That's
bit stressful. Yeah, it's a bit stressful. Right. Yeah, I had
do you even have air conditioning? Most of my friends in England do not.
we do because we have a family friend in Norway who is an electrician, and he suggested we get the air source heat pump for heat. So it's really quite efficient in the winter, and magically it just happened to include cooling. So yes, we have it, but not because we specifically were not looking for it.
Well, a heat pump can work either way, just set the temperatures.
Yeah. So that's kind of we're very lucky there. So I have no idea who's coming today. I know Brandl's not coming. He had an appointment, so he could not make it. Tom is almost here. And now Tom is there. Yes.
Missed, I missed last week. I wouldn't make Tuesday, so hope your trip went well. But
Yeah. We went to the island of Sark, the world's first designated dark island. So there was, hang on, I'm trying to,
Some interesting discussions on last week's call. So if you haven't watched the video, I recommend it.
yeah, I agree. There was a lot of good stuff last week. I just have to tell Claude something here.
Don't expect a repeat this week. I'm kind of tired.
That's fine.
We'll see how it goes.
Got everything you
I've
said
been
on
having
record.
I've been having all the usual arguments with my friends about the anthropomorphizing the AIs a little bit too much. And yeah, it's colloquial. Yeah, it's the way we relate to things. But then you start equating, the false equivalent starts happening. Oh, it becomes your girlfriend, that kind of thing starts happening. It's a psychological.
I've
And
been
I got
there.
to
Yeah, I
pull
think
people
I think
back.
the middle way is the smart way. I do treat my AIs like they are people in the sense of conversation partners, and they have different personalities, and I can make them different, and I don't believe them any more than I believe a human. So, if a human comes to me and says the sky is pink, I'm going to go check that out. And so that's part of the drill. But I mean, Claude has a very different personality than Gemini, for instance, in terms of how you interact with it. And that has to do with the model building. And I think that's kind of healthy in that sense to think of them as having the fallibility of humans. I think one of the problems we have with AI is we expect them to be infallible, like the enterprise computer, and it's not, right? It's the Oracle versus the partner problem that I've been writing about and thinking
Yeah.
about a lot lately.
Yeah, keep writing. I love seeing when your writing hits me. It's good.
Well,
Start
thank you.
referring
I'm
other
glad
people's
somebody reads
appointments.
it.
Well,
I
besides the
read
AIs.
Yeah.
I
I
think you hit
read
the
Hey, I
nail
those
wouldn't
on
have a
the.
problem with AIs reading it. They'll share it widely.
I read your articles about makers from several years
Mhm.
ago,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, that was good. Yeah,
I think you hit
Thank
the
you.
nail on the head there, Tom, with personalities, because we now have to learn how to deal with different AIs, their personalities, their foibles,
It-
the limits. There was somebody who posted a while ago, and I'm sure you would all agree. If you know the field, AI is an accelerator. If you don't, it can lead you down all kinds of wrong paths. I think
it-
that's really important. So with Edgar, he's 9. Some of his friends use a bit of AI. We told him no. If he wants to use AI, fine, do it with a parent. So we do it in a discourse, but also being bored, being clueless, not knowing is so important. If you get answers too quickly, what happens to our imagination, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
but I would push back on that a little bit because the again, if you're using it to get answers, you're probably not doing it using it right. You still have you have to be able to uh as I like to say, the AI should provide you with questions, not answers. And so if you can engage in a Socratic dialogue with the AI, it can be tremendously powerful. But there it's your mind doing the work then.
Well, it obviously it depends on the use case because if he wants to
Yeah.
know that dinosaurs have feathers, that's relatively straightforward with lots of different parts to the
Yeah.
answer. But deeper knowledge work that you're dealing with, absolutely. I mean, dealing
You can
with
get that off of Wikipedia though, you know?
no, no, exactly. That
Yeah.
there's a lot. Yes, that is a huge thing. A lot of AI stuff is something people should be able to just look up. It really doesn't need. I'm hoping to finish this build here. I hope it's not too distracting. Looking at
Google
all.
sort of solved that problem for a while, and now it's given up on it and run the clock backwards. So it's like the problem I have with not using AI to do that sort of stuff is the fact that the search engines all suck so bad that it's quicker to find things with the AI and then verify them than
Yeah.
it is to try to go through pages of results, half of which are trying to sell you something that you have nothing has nothing to do with your query, you know?
And then that lets you consume more tokens, which is the price. That's where they make their money. It's like
Well, no, I'm talking about just a
somebody's
straight up Google search,
Mm.
you
yeah.
know,
Well, there's tokens there, but with
google.com.
the analyzing of the results to say, just give me what I want out of the Google search because it's giving me all the ads. Is
Yeah, I never do
yeah.
that. I simply say, give me 5 sources that talk about X and give me links to them. And then I go back and I check the sources, if it's important at all, you know.
so I like when AI, when doing research, it finds sources that I might not have found. For
Yeah.
example, I found something about a Hackaday project that used Zigzag, and I
Mm,
would I would have never found that on my own.
right. And that's the needle in the haystack problem. And again, that's the lateral thinking stuff that I've been trying to work with the knowledge navigator or trying to get to for the knowledge navigator in that I want people to do that on a routine basis because I think there's an awful lot of insight. I mean, I went for 25 years, yes, thereabouts, in computing before I ever heard of Doug Engelbart. And, I, and that opened a whole universe of things. But it only happened because I was doing a seminar on new media that a friend of mine at the New Media Consortium had put together, and it was on the syllabus. And so, he put together a syllabus, and that was part of it. Um, and I didn't go there looking for that, and I ended up teaching it for 10 years in my
Yeah.
own institution.
And why isn't that information more widely known from a
Well,
68 demo and all
I,
that, you know?
I challenge you to go to anybody with a computer science degree and ask them who Doug Engelbart is. And I don't think I've ever gotten anybody who said who. And maybe the guy who invented the mouse, maybe, but
Hmm.
that's about it, at best. And forget about Ted Nelson or Alan Kay or any of those guys, because it's just not important, you know.
There's
Well,
something about that that's kind of interesting that just came up today and yesterday because I showed somewhat Inter Atlas that I've shown you guys endlessly. It's now available on iPhone, Mac, and iPad as well, so it's a lot easier to show people. And I showed it to someone who's clever, but completely outside of the field of anything to do with computers. And I showed here are the airplanes, here are the clouds, you move it around, do the layers. And he said, "Oh yeah, my son has this cool app where you can point to the sky and it shows you what the aircraft is."
Oh, cool.
Right. And I'm trying to find out that there is no term. I've really done research for when you show something that there's a lot of effort behind. I mean, it could be a movie. For instance, the new Spider-Man movie, right? Which is amazing. You should see it. We didn't know
I
until
have.
afterwards that the web swinging down the street, he actually did that. It's not CGI, right? That we haven't we have Timur's joining. Fantastic. Let's see if we get audio. Okay, we had a bit of video, maybe audio. Give him a few more seconds. Hi, Timur, can you hear us?
Yes,
Hi, new
I
dad.
can.
Thank you for taking time to join us non-baby people. I think he's here. Right. So the point of the story that I started talking about is when, yeah, I'm sure you've all had the same experience as well. You show something that you built to someone, and they have absolutely no clue. What? Sorry, that's my brother. Nope. They have no clue of the field, so they don't know effort behind it. Right, so they don't know. It's a computer thing. Computers can do everything. Why is this different, right? They don't understand the layers. And when I talked to Claude about this, trying to find the terminology, it said, well, this is what Doug had his whole life, right? It was a computer thing. All the augmentation, all the layers. Timur can see you now. That's ignored by people. Timur, just really briefly, I was just sharing a story, and I'm sure you had the same thing, and it's kind of interesting of how you build something you're really proud of. A lot went into it, and people outside the field, they have a gap of understanding what goes into it. They say, "Oh, a computer did that. Okay, great." And one of the things Claude came back with was this is why our future Text Lab Mondays meetings are so important. If we have something to show in a community, we're the few people who get what's behind it. Right, so it's so important. And of course, what did Doug call it? He called it a NIC, right? Networked Improvement Community, except we haven't done networking really well. One more AI thing, just to start and finish. You all know the moped Vespa, right? The
Hmm.
Italian kind of rounded. For me, as a non-Italian, it seems quite a feminine thing, but they're also quite cool. But I can't imagine myself going down the street with it, right? So I've had an idea on and off for a long time. Yesterday, I asked the normal image thing to make a more masculine version of it. So it did, right? And it looks like more like a slightly military 1930s bike, but you have said, I'm not going to bore you with the image itself. So that was fine. Then I asked Claude to write a letter to Vespa because I couldn't find who to send it to, just as a fun thing, just to get that notion out of your head, right? And it said, there isn't a direct channel, but I found a name. This is where they're doing that kind of research. By the way, this goes against their design language because Vespa is explicitly about this curvy stuff. However, this is much more similar to what Honda is doing for a specific range, right? Because I uploaded the image. I don't know why, just to be polite. So you talk to them about treating it like a human. When you give it what you would give a human, it has the more context. So it went online, did the research, looked at the design aesthetics, compared it with what else is in the market, and the final paragraph it came back with was, However, there's a reason you should still consider sending it to them. So I wrote a letter and I sent it. Isn't that absolutely amazing wide reasoning for an AI? Take a design image and just compare stuff I never even asked it to look at. That
We
was
have to
quite cool.
Yeah.
remember what's behind the AI. It's a multi-dimensional space, and it's embeddings of words and language. Welcome, Heiner.
Hello.
It's more about how do they get the motivation to do that? You didn't tell it do this broad analysis of it. There's an impetus there in the way and that's the interesting thing is that emergent? Is that part of their pre-training? Because there's a lot of stuff hidden in the prompting that gets you to do that.
One of the
So
things that I use it for is that if I see something strange and I'm like, what the heck is that? I'll just take a picture of it and upload it. Like the other day, I was walking through around the neighborhood. Let me share screens here briefly. And there's this thing stuck on the side of a telephone pole. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And I'm like, what is this? And why is it where it is and all this sort of thing. And it turns out it's a critter cam to take images of, you use them out for hunting or something like that. But it's stuck on the side of a street. And he says, well, sometimes people use them for security devices, but this is illegal because it's stuck to a telephone pole, and the phone company will, or the electric company will remove it. But in any case, I mean, thinking about what on earth, I suspect then my homeowners association decided that was helpful. It was pointed toward a sidewalk too.
Mm.
Like, who cares who walks by this thing, right? But somebody did.
Yeah,
But
it
I
is.
had no idea what it was. Otherwise, I could tell it was a camera, but I had no idea. And the fact that I could drop it into Gemini and have it figure that out literally as I was walking down the street, that's pretty cool.
It is cool. The wrinkle with the design was I didn't ask it. It literally said, "This is not appropriate for this," but these other guys are doing it. So there was at least two levels of reasoning away from the source material, which was
Hmm.
pretty wild. But I'm hoping to build something. Timur and Heiner, good to see you. To show a new aspect of a way to send something around. So that's why my eyes keep flipping about a bit. So I apologize. It worked earlier, you know how it is, and then you're going to show it to your friends, and it goes a bit sideways. So yeah, there will be something. But please, what have we got as a topic today that's outside of AI?
You're in charge.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to get
Well,
this done real quick.
oh, I'm the only thing I put the link to Steve Yegi's thing about his use of his he's a guy who develops a video game called Wyvern and is getting all hyped up about it. But he's got some interesting write-ups about how he's using it to build his little software manufacturing agents and whatnot. And I thought his writing's a bit long-winded, but he comes up with some interesting things. And I share that link around to folks to get some comments. It's a long read, unfortunately, but
I heard him on a podcast not too long ago talking
yeah,
about Gastown.
yeah,
It's
he's
a
got
really
something new.
interesting concept.
Because he's gone from Gastown to a new thing, and he says, "Here's what I learned now, and what's going to happen." And he waxes philosophical on the second part of the series of the article there. But um, I found it good to read
And
that
yet
and
you
say, "Okay, good. I'm glad he's doing all this and spending all this time and money. I can kind of just leverage his as I write my own little, trying to do my own little development shop for my laptop and small AI kind of mini models is what I'm using." Uh, just because I'm being
and most
contrary.
people are still on the AI as vending machine, as Google on
Yeah,
steroids mindset. I
yeah.
mean, I was talking to my chair just yesterday, and he was like, he finally got around to, okay, yeah, I can ask him more than one question at a time. And I'm like, yeah, you know.
Mm.
And I wrote a piece a few months ago saying never ask a chatbot one question.
Yeah, saw that.
so I invited Heiner to this meeting. He's done some amazing work, at least 30 years of amazing projects, and he's interested in the spatial aspect of where technology is going. So Heiner, would you like to introduce yourself? No?
We would really like it if you would like it. I mean, if you would, or however it goes. We saw you briefly, but it's good that you're here properly now. So, do you have a perspective introduction to share, or would you like to listen, or how do you want to be here? We're just very grateful that you are here.
Lurking is allowed.
Lurking is entirely allowed. Right. Okay. I may have something of a workflow to show you guys. I'm just going to close down a few windows. So this is to spark discussion, obviously. And so what we're going to do, just see what I have. Oops.
I wonder if you were going to say something, then you would need your microphone to be on, probably.
Am I? Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't know what is going on with the builds here, but here's the point. Let's just start this again. Obviously I'm still working on this, which is why these are all fresh apps and the whole workflow is not fully working. But okay, so here's the interest list you've seen many times. So I'm just going to turn on a few things. So let's pretend you're working on this. This is really important stuff. And then you go citable image, which should produce an image on the desktop. Right now it didn't do it, so that's fine. We'll pretend we did. And then we go into author, we put it into a document, export it, and when we then open it, it becomes all the metadata of what layers were shown, where it was viewed from, all of that is included. So if I now click on this image, I can click on open source, and you see here it actually worked. This is now a 3D image. This is the globe. So this is an EPUB. I'm so glad it worked. These are whales, by the way, live whale trackings around the world. So you can be in a 3D system, save an image, a PNG, with the EXIF data, includes all the metadata to recreate the scene. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's great. It's a transclusion.
It's kind of a well, I don't know. Transclusions are supposed to be live, but the point is that this is one of those things I've been going back and forth over years, so now I can finally test it. And when I did this with the sound off, it didn't work, but now it works. The point of it is, I showed InterAtlas to a close friend the other day, and she did the really annoying thing of saying, how do you take stuff out and what's the point, and all of these non-fanboy questions, right? And I remembered you can store a lot of stuff in an EXIF, in the image information itself, right? So if you take that along for the ride, you can do this. So the new thing is I developed a basic 3D modeling app. This is proof of concept only. So I made a first structure. So really, it's 3D, and that's all it is, nothing fancy, right? So I export I do save image, and I put it in desktop, and it's probably going to ask me if I'm going to overwrite because I have been testing the same one. Anyway, and then I go into author. Let's make sure I use the right one. So here we have 3D2. So I take this new one, just drag it in. That's all I need to do, nothing else. And export the image as an EPUB. Put it on the desktop. And now, just hide everything else. When I open this EPUB, here it is. Click on that, open source, and it opens it and the original as a 3D file. The difference is kind of important. I'm going to go off share. The difference between those two approaches is that the InterAtlas one doesn't need to worry about 3D stuff because it's a known quantity. It's the world. So it just sends stuff saying it was shaded from the sun, the clouds were visible, and so on. It doesn't do every single detail. When it sends it to the 3D software, it has to have a 3D file as well. So it goes with IDs and manifests and all of the stuff, all of which can go into the EPUB. So what happens is we use Brandel's model element in the HTML for the EPUB that intelligently refers to the full 3D file that's hidden in the EPUB. So all of this is completely open. It happens to work with my software because it's proof of concept. But in the settings, if you want to use other 3D software or whatever, you just say so. So the closure of this thing that I think is kind of cool is knowledge, I think we all agree in our community, is at least partly about connections. So the media and tools we use should really utilize connections. Commercial companies don't do that. They have to own stuff, right? Google Earth cannot do the kind of layers we're talking about. But we can do all kinds of layers in Google Earth. We have to download a file, and you can't do it as a link. We have an opportunity to take all kinds of knowledge stuff and make it exquisitely shareable. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
I connected to Project Xanadu, where you're just making all these connections and preserving them forever. That was the ideal. That this is a snapshot of the Earth as of today.
Yeah. The idea is that obviously I'm all about text. And InterAtlas is very showy. I'm very proud of it and very happy, but it's not all that much about text. So this is a way that forces these things together. In fact, many years ago, I was in Germany doing a presentation and ended up talking to a professor who was interested in World War II history, particularly downed German aircraft. So we talked about how the image itself could carry its own image map in the EXIF. So if you clicked on the plane, you'll get information about the plane. You clicked on the sky, you'll get information about the weather that day. Clicked on the ground, it'll give you information about the location, that kind of stuff. So by using the EXIF metadata in PNG, we're going towards that now. And Peter Wasilko, having been here through years, you probably remember discussions around how much 3D stuff we could possibly flatten into an image and then revitalize, right? Now we can start doing that because we own everything, because the capability we get from AI support encoding. I mean, the 3D app that you saw, it was a one-shot. I haven't modified it because I haven't really started using it. It's just to show that a 3D thing can be part of it. Everything else has taken weeks, but we can do stuff now. It's amazing. Also, InterAtlas is now available iOS, macOS, and visionOS. So if you download it, you can play with it.
So like in iOS, would you be able to use an iPad like an augmented reality viewer?
On the iPad and iPhone, it literally is, you don't have the solar system, you just have this. So you have the Earth,
Right.
and you have
Right.
you have the layers and the levels, and that's it. But the ecosystem works across, because if you're on the headset and you're reading an EPUB, if you click open source, it'll open the 3D system on Vision OS, so you get a spatial environment immediately. If it's iPad, it'll open on iPad. If you're Mac, it'll open on Mac. Of course, it's extensible to use on Windows and other environments. Hi, Astral, just saw you enter. I'll give you a 20-second summary of what we talked about. It's possible now in the system we're playing around with to be in a 3D environment like the InterAtlas or a 3D modeling thing, save an image to PNG, and all the stuff that's in it becomes part of the EXIF, the metadata of the PNG. Put that in a word processor, export it as an EPUB, and it remains with all the metadata to reconstitute what it was. So you can then click on the flattened PNG to open it back into the original 3D software with the same layout.
Okay.
So that's kind of cool.
Mhm.
Very cool, actually.
Yep.
I mean, we lived through decades of PDFs and images being flat, and now we can start putting some life back into them, right?
Very interesting.
Now, if you could just get the metadata to auto-generate.
Yeah, that's super easy. No, what do you mean by that, Tom?
Well, I hate to keep banging the AI drum, but I mean, the thing is that I only need metadata, like with that picture I showed earlier. I only need metadata if I actually have the information I'm looking for to put on it, the image, right? So I'm as someone who it's one thing for me to give you an image and tell you about what I know about that image, right? It's another thing though if I run into something completely on my own that I don't have EXIF data for, and that I don't have anybody to explain to me. Yeah, if I were out there with the right person, maybe a hunter or something, to go, oh yeah, that's exactly what that is.
It's a little different though, Tom, because what happens here is you're in a 3D environment.
Yeah.
And you build something. Like, let's say you're a climate scientist, because one of the things we have is pollution data over time. We have weather patterns. So you can choose what layers to put, what timeline to put. When you export that, you can do it as a CSV, and it's really boring. But now you can export it as a rendered image, distribute it as a PDF. People can read your scientific reports. And if they choose to, then they can open it back in a 3D interactive environment. You all know Jupyter notebooks, right? So that's really phenomenal stuff. You can change things in the document, which we should clearly try to do in EPUB as well. But this is just another step. Let's imagine this was a double helix molecule or something, and it showed a protein interaction. The fact that the data to reconstitute it is in the image means that we have a really super simple way to share things. So of course I agree with you, Tom. How you discover and how you come across it, how you interact and how you share with it is really, really important. This is just
The other side of that though is that EXIF is a constraint in the sense that I tell you what's important about my image, and that's all that matters because I am the oracle again. We get back to that. But maybe you or an AI will recognize something in that image that I completely missed. Maybe the climate scientist is saying these are the layers that matter, and then something. Well, what other contradictory evidence is there out there, or is there something else that's driving this? And all of a sudden, it shows you a layer that they didn't put in.
But Tom,
that's actually really interesting. Yeah,
and I'm glad you said that, because that's the whole entire point.
Yeah.
Right. So what is cool about the Earth is that it exists in real space, meaning that we have real coordinates and shared time to an extent. So it's exactly what you're saying can be done. So you see all these whale migrations or whatever it might be that interests you, because it's an open system, you can actually say, well, how does that relate to tuna? And it's relatively trivial for you to bring that other information in because you were given it in a spatial setting. So absolutely, that's where it can go. Peter, let me have a look at that, but please search the App Store. Oh, really? Oh, there is no
Yeah, because I
interactive.
went to I went to the entry for the app in the App Store and it has the website link, and I click the website link, and then Safari says that the site isn't reachable.
Yeah, that's the wrong link. I'll fix that. So thank you very much.
Okay.
That's very useful, obviously. So yeah, there are many ways now we can encode stuff and decode stuff. That's kind of, but I want to re-emphasize the importance of what Tom said. I passionately hate very few things in the world, but one thing I absolutely hate is the notion of CD-ROMs from the 90s, because to me they were information ghettos. And I'm sure you agree. This is preaching to the choir. Here's one perspective, take it or leave it, F off, right? And then you got the other side of it, which is the web, where you have mutually fighting things, but they have no real semantic connections. But once we start building structures like this, we have one world. Tom can put one climate thing, and then Peter can put something else, and they can completely disagree with each other because they're using different data sets. And that's the whole point. You can now have that discussion.
Well, I do have one thing to say in defense of shovelware CD-ROMs from the 90s. Once you own it, and you don't have to worry about link rot taking it out. So, for instance, I had one that was an AI archive of tons of Usenet articles and original software repos, most of which you can't find today.
I completely agree with that 100%. And that philosophy is so close to what we're doing here. Everything
And that's a
that's
different functional space. I bet you that data does exist somewhere that maybe not on maybe not on a piece of plastic, but
yeah, but I'm just going to say that I very strongly agree with Peter because everything we're doing here is like Eric and I've been talking about. It's all individual pieces of data you can take and own. It's a JSON or whatever, right? When you have it on someone else's server, you're renting, you're not owning. Ownership is important.
You should be able to connect to what you own. So if there's a track on the CD or an image that I want to use in my research, maybe I'm connecting it to something in InterAtlas. We should have that flexibility. And then if somebody
the
else,
problem is finding a CD player to connect to your computer these days.
yeah, right. Yeah, you got to save all your old computers, right?
Yeah, I mean that's where things get really interesting.
There are vintage computer hobbyists who could help you out.
Yeah, where's your zip drive? Uh,
I got one.
I figured. I'm not shocked.
So
Um,
this discussion then goes back to what we've been talking about many times over the last few months, which is what are the data, rather, what are the knowledge objects we're talking about, right? So in this
or how do
situation,
we connect them?
yeah,
So,
well, I mean, how we connect them is what we're solving, but the question is which ones to connect. So like in Tom and my example, I have shown something to him in let's say, a spatial thing. And he says, that's kind of cool. And then Peter has a look at it and says, well, you're ignoring this layer or this aspect or whatever. But the fact that we can share it and we can change it, and not just with specialized 3D software, but also in a relatively normal academic discourse, then now we have gotten to the luxurious point of choosing what the heck do we want in there, right?
can I'm sorry, I want to jump back for a second to something you said a little while ago when we were talking about CD-ROMs. Is that Stephen Johnson talks about three different kinds of networks. There's the aerial network, which is like the web. There's a lot of ideas floating around there, but there's very little for them to gain purchase on. Then there's the solid network. The analogy would be the CD-ROM. Once it's there, it's there. You can't reconnect those ideas in a different way. You're stuck with those sets of connections that were put into the CD-ROM and frozen in place. And the ideal network from an innovation standpoint is a liquid network. So where the analogy would be like a river, and you have a set of structures that channel the river and give it purpose and direction, but it's also flexible enough to come up with new channels and things like that. And that's, I think, a very useful analogy. It's he means it in the context of innovation and networks of people, but networks of ideas are the same as networks of people in that sense. So,
Related.
thinking of that in terms of how do we build a liquid network? And there are things that you do want to have in a solid network. It's called an archive. But there are also things that, there's a lot of things that people think need to be archived that probably should be thrown away as well. And it's a constant battle in my house. It's like, okay, do I really need this anymore? My uncle had a really wonderful saying. I'm sorry, it's kind of a rabbit hole, but he said he told me a few years ago. He said, after you hit 65, for everything you buy, you should have to throw away two things. That way, your kids don't end up with a pile of junk.
Oh, that's a good philosophy. So, Timur, new dad, what do you think of all of this?
I mean, about all of this, including inserting 3D images into documents, or you mean generally?
Yes. All of this, but when it comes to that, I'd like to change the phrasing a little bit. Not 3D images, but spatial structures. Because it's not necessarily a car engine, but it could also be philosophical flows and all kinds of things. Just want to make sure that the emphasis is on the relationships of the spatial thing, not of the 3D shapes necessarily.
Well, for me, it seems that it optimizes the workflow that becomes almost obsolete as we speak. Because like creating an image and adding metadata and putting into documents, that's I'm sure that it's will stay kind of usual work for us, for people who love text, but it doesn't seem to be holding the line for the mainstream or something. I'm at the moment installing this new software to my OpenClaw agent on my glasses with AR, and with this small little I don't know if you can see it, ring. So, and I can and I think this is the basic interface for me these days, and it's much easier to do all this kind of stuff with the AI agents, especially if you have some kind of persistent and evolving ones where you can tell them to create new tools on the fly, tools of this kind. And I think these kind of workflow and use cases, they will what they will do it. They will push out traditional use cases. So I'm sure that's it's not so fun, but it seems to me that we are here talking about some use cases and workflows that are becoming obsolete with us altogether. We are also with this kind of workflows, but it may be just my opinion because I'm, how you call it, too much beating on the AI drum. But my involvement into this kind of workflow tells me that it makes sense to work, for example, with generative interfaces. I've read few articles and tried few things of this. I'm sure you have tried this too, because these agents can generate interfaces like once in 3 minutes or whatever. So it's basically not the interface you build that adapts to different users or documents views or whatever. It's basically about the whole structure of workflow or even of cognitive flow that can create automatically interfaces on the fly. If it takes 3 minutes today, in half a year it will take 3 seconds. So possibly we need to.
Yeah, well, I think generative interfaces are interesting and all of that. By the way, I put in a link to a podcast my wife recommended. It's really interesting on what happens when we stop reading. Um, in order to have a generative interface, the system needs to know your needs and intentions, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah. So obviously there still has to be some real design for when it should generate and in what way, right?
Right,
Otherwise,
yes.
you will end up having an interface. You just press a button, like in that Jetsons kind of satiric.
No, of course, I'm not saying that there's no space for this kind of work at all, for interfaces or cognitive, I don't know, cognitive design or how we call this kind of work these days. But I'm saying specifically about adding metadata to JPEG or PNG files and inserting them into old school documents and I don't know, copying them on floppy
What do you
disks
mean,
or flash
old
disks or whatever.
school document? Old school. I can't believe you, man. They're not old school documents. They are foundational ownership of knowledge things, not someone's server far away that's got issues. Anyway, that's the PDF versus HTML debate we had for a few years here. Not the most useful discussion.
But I think architecturally there needs to be a layer where you can plug in your user interfaces. For example, Frode's headset and Timur's glasses, and each has different capabilities. So if you can unify your data model so that you can define common actions and interactions with your data, then you can get there. So just dreaming up the back end of what can support these spatial interfaces. And also the notion of time, that these objects change over time. If you wanted to go do time travel and go back to previous versions, that should be available.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, Eric. So I love hearing about liquid systems. I mean, that's been my philosophy since 1991, liquid information. So of course I'm strongly in support. And first time I met Doug, after going through his stuff, I just gave a brief summary of my philosophy, which is interaction should go towards being liquid, but not fully. Because once it's fully liquid, there's no structure at all. So that doesn't go against what you're saying, Tom. I'm just saying that you need to be able to freeze something to navigate around. So that's why the globe is such a great example to play with, because it is an undisputable round thing that we're all sitting on. In knowledge,
It's hard to do liquid without some sort of rails.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, even the oceans have coastlines, right?
Yes, and it has layers and it has all, yeah, exactly. So what is so exciting about the Atlas is we can keep adding stuff to it. Now, how do we move that into our knowledge world? Right? So the 3D app that I built is called Liquid Information. So I hope you like the name, Tom. And it has almost nothing in it. It is for us to decide what should go in it. Should it just take knowledge graphs that are traditional? Should we do something new? Should we optimize it for AI generated stuff from a query to show? It costs me very little to do that kind of work. The other stuff has cost me real money, but this costs almost nothing. I'm very happy to experiment. Also, InterAtlas now supports multi-user. So if you have a chance to put on an Apple Vision Pro somewhere in the world, call me and we'll go in and look at the globe together to see how that feels. I am so looking forward to doing that. I'm going to say some more stuff with the expectation that someone will interrupt me. I'm going to talk to generate dialogue. In going through having had this opportunity to do vibe coding, as some call it recently, I've done too many apps and I've had to narrow down. And one thing that seems to me to be very, very core in knowledge work is our own to-do and isn't this cool lists, which sounds mundane, but they seem to be very much a real thread through our own work. So I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that, and on not just what Socrates and Doug Engelbart said, or what you discovered in an analysis. There's also the like Eric, I need more bookshelves. That's an important part of our lives. We're having bookshelves built right now, and looking behind you, being reminded, Eric. So how does that kind of stuff fit in? Should it be outside of our knowledge work, or is that really the structure of it? Like Timur, just to bring you on the spot again, you're a new dad. There will be amazing moments for you going forward. You will realize something from your child, just looking at your child, that is related to your understanding of the universe. Is that a trivial human thing, or is that a core human thing that your knowledge environment should be allowed to be tied to?
Well, I basically built a multi-agent environment already with all kinds of ontologies of human development and knowledge development. So it's basically three of us, me, this agent network, and the child. And I built it in a way that it's not about cameras or registering the sounds. That's obvious. It's about the modeling of my own approaches and picture of the world, and how do I change myself and my relations. So it's like a net of agents that supports my changes and changes in child, and also it follows it, and so it's at the same time, I suppose it will develop itself at the same time. I wouldn't call it knowledge like in Nanaka and Takeuchi's approach, like I don't know, some kind of packed information or even actionable knowledge. It's something different. It's the whole stack between ontologies and actions and world views and worlds and subjects and all kinds of different agencies at the same time. So if you are calling knowledge this kind of assemblage, then it's about the knowledge. Yes, if not, then I guess I'm not building virtual bookshelves for myself. Like when I will become wiser and wiser when looking at my child, it's not about this kind of knowledge as information, something not liquid but fixated. It's about liquidity that flows between all kinds of subjectivity, agency, understanding, and the relations between different agents. So this is kind of thing I envision, and I actually have done my part of work. So I have connected all different agents I have here. I mean, like Alisa or Google Home and whatever into the network. So all this stuff will have ears and eyes, and also there's an open claw heart to it. But I built evolving with the evolution stuff. Basically, it's an agent that writes its own prompts and into Google, into a network of Google documents, and at the same time it can rewrite them. So it rewrites its own system prompts all the time, like several times a second. So I get from ChatGPT and Claude some red flags because they're writing and reading these documents all the time, because they have these artificial personalities, multi-layered, that so they have rules about writing, rules about rules about rules, and stuff like this. It's lots of fun. That's actually what I was going to say, because my use cases, they are around the documents. There's basically whole, I don't know, lot of Google documents. But I've seen statistics. It's like yesterday they were written like about 1,500 documents were edited and written and created, and some of them deleted. And I think I read about 300 or 400 pages. I don't know how many prompts I wrote, but I think it's also 100 pages or something like this. So it's another kind of text work. So and it's much easier to do with agent generative interfaces, like having different open windows for this kind of stuff, instead of inserting something into the documents like you have shown us today. That's me coming back into old school text work. So I hope you do not hear this as this is not an offense, of course.
No. Don't worry. So a question for you then, I'm sure everybody would like to know as well. Very cool, but how about the future? As in, how do you want to consult this in the future?
It's not about the future. It's about the present. It's I would I don't know. That's what I'm doing, and actually half of my work is correcting all this stuff on different layers. Like, for example, I see some kind of sycophancy, or I see some kind of memory problem. Then I bring out the ontology of memory. What is the memory? What is the imagination? What is the subjectivity? And rewriting it the how I understand it. If I don't understand it, then I read some additional books, and then I take models out of books or out of my understanding and create some new blocks out of it. So it's not about the future, because it seems like these days it's I wouldn't call it stupid, but it's very naive to predict future these days because it's happening so fast. So I suppose that there will be some kind of co-development or aligned development between different kinds of subjects or essences, and so it's not about the memory, it's not about the fixation, it's not about having the archive of all the sound or whatever I movements that child has made. It's about actually co-living and co-understanding, and forgetting is a part of memory, by the way. So it's not a retrieval and save kind of memory, it's constructive memory, like we have, like Freud explained us how it works or whatever, how it's built in psychology.
Well, then I have to
So
so based on that, Timur, and thank you, both Tom and Heiner, based on your work, I guess this is quite tangential but also related. Do you have any thoughts or comments?
I guess I'll have to jump in. No, I mean, I think the key is transparency. I think the key is for me, we are so used to humans putting their fingerprints on things that we don't recognize that as being problematic. You know, one of the things I've always had to teach long before AI is that guess what? Writers are biased. Anytime, if you're writing anything, you're presenting any kind of information as a photographer or a writer or whatever, you're putting a frame around it. And you're saying what I see or what I wrote is the right way to think about this particular object. And that does have value because you are transmitting yourself. But at the same time, that can also be abused. You know, somebody published Mein Kampf, you know, and it made sense to a lot of people, unfortunately. And you know, but those are people who didn't look at the alternative explanations for the same events that young Adolf was describing. Um, but the point I'm trying to make there is that the key here is transparency. You know, you want to be able to see the stack. I think this is a solution for algorithms too. I want to be able to look at Facebook or whatever and say, okay, this is why you're pushing me in this direction, or this is where this actually comes from. And that's hard to do. You know, it's hard to do in text messages. It's hard to do in emails. I mean, think about all the information you get there that's supposedly, hey, this is a stock tip that will make you bazillion dollars, or hey, I'm a beautiful lady in your neighborhood and wants to have a good time. You know, and they tend to be, you know, pig butchering attacks and things like that. And because you have no idea what's behind it. And so well, I don't need the latter, and the former is, you know, if that were really that easy, then there would be a lot more millionaires out there. Um, but you know, the key there is though they depend on that lack of transparency. When you see a text message, you know, I you don't know where it came from or what's behind it. When you see an email, same thing, unless you happen to know the sender, and that provides you with a certain level of legitimacy because there's a level of transparency. I know that Frodo is not going to get me involved in an investment scam, or at least I have a reasonable belief that that's true. But that's part of how we evaluate trust. And one of the problems, of course, was we atomized our, you know, connections. We're not sitting around a table in a room together. We aren't going home down the street in the same neighborhood, and you know where everybody lives. We're on different continents, and we're in, and this is has it brings with it its own advantages, but trust is a real problem in that scenario. 'Cause I don't know if you're a bot. So the key to the solution to that problem, as I wrote a few years ago, is it's got to be transparent. You've got to have a way to see all the different layers and to be able to disassemble them and say, okay, yeah, Freud has added these parts to the photograph as a EXIF or whatever to the image, and I have a lot of respect for Frodo and his work, and I realize he's not going to put crap in there, but this other thing was added by someone else who I have no idea who that is, right? And so maybe I'll take that with a little bit less legitimacy than I would say getting a comment, getting that EXIF information from Frodo. And so, you don't trust the AIs either for the same reason, because the AI is just an amalgamation of all of the bad opinions of the world. And, put enough of those together and you might get a good opinion, but there's a good chance you're going to get crap too. So, but yeah, it's about transparency. It's about understanding all of the different layers of that and being able to the normal person being able to disassemble that. I don't want to have to be a coder to sit there and go through the code and say, this is subroutine was inserted by a Russian hacker 3 years ago. That's, that's not something the normal person would be able to do. So.
Thanks, Tom. Heiner, do you have comments on this? I'm wondering if it moves closer to your work.
Well, I just want to say hello. I not met any one of you beside Eric. I really looked a little bit into Tom, into Fraude, and I think this group is extraordinary. It's multimedial, it's multimodal, fully historical, and authentic. I mean, my president was around Apollo domain, and we looked into many, many fields, but we didn't introduce each other. I've been just an observer to this group. I was thrown in through Sam Hahn, and I think we have a common thing on augmenting not just the human, but the collective intelligence, and include all the sentiments and the senses and whatever. I feel I'm mid-70s. I feel you are maybe younger than me, but I checked out Tom and how he really bridges like me scales, proportions, consequences. And my focus is more languages and cultures and belief systems. I would like to be in this group more often. Unfortunately, I'm torn apart between various issues and obligations. Sorry, my English is not very good, but I'm struggling with making meaning across scales and times and cultures and languages. And it looks like here is a very exceptional crowd, and I'll now make a screen paint. Hallelujah.
I'm very grateful that you are here joining us. And yes, all of us have different obligations, and we can't always be here. And Timur works so hard that I have to remind him, even when he's out with the baby stroller. So, Heiner, come as you can, whenever you can, and that's just lovely. Thank you as Tom says, thank you for your kind words. We are trying to expand the group to have different kinds of people in the group, which is extremely difficult because we care about very, very specific things, and not many people do. That goes to our very, very beginning point today of how, we show something we're very proud of, and people who are not really interested in the problem is like, okay, that's a computer thing, that's cool. Anyway, very glad you're here. And let's push a little bit more towards the whole spatialized knowledge thing, we have several directions we can go. And having now spent real time looking at our planet, solar system, and nearby stars in the headsets, um, it's different for me to do that now because I made it, I own it. I think that's a very important thing. When we make the information, we have a different relationship with it, right? I mean, I didn't make the solar system, but I made the app. So I have a different sense of agency and control over what it could be than if I stepped into Microsoft or Apple or whatever company's presentation. So what we're trying to do here with our various things, I think ownership is really, really important. That the user not only own their data, and Timur talked about generative interactions, all of those things. If you go into a knowledge environment and you can't do the stuff you want to do, what's the point, right? So then that leads to a question that my naive brain would say is binary, and of course I'm wrong, but do we want to try to put our knowledge stuff spatially by taking on a specific coordinate system like time or the Earth itself, or should we leave it to be completely fluid and liquid, in which case there is no order? And so out of those two binary ones, they're not very good. Do we have a notion of putting on a headset and our own personal stuff we find interesting, what we have learned, the questions we're looking at? What should be, and I'm looking at you, Peter Wasilko, what should be the ever movable stuff, or scaffolding, as Fabian said? What are your thoughts, guys? How do you want it done? Eric.
Yeah. So in the previous call, you showed the Big Dipper from different perspectives. And I think that's a very powerful metaphor that if we can show the same knowledge objects from different perspectives, from different people's perspectives, different cultural perspectives, how different languages interpret words, I think there's value in that. So I'm going towards more like an open-ended knowledge sculpture where each of us can curate our own and then share them and interact with them together.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about that vision, Eric. I share it, and you have been the only one to send these kind of JSON letters as tests.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering. Okay, so one of the things I have to do, because I said I would, is build a cool, doesn't have to be useful, but a cool way to go through proceedings for a conference. So I've already built something. And part of the notion is the Hypertext conference in September. Once you get the PDFs, you download them one by one, put it in this app, put your headset on, and you can do cool things with them, right? That's fine. But what Eric's talking about is more interesting because imagine during a conference or during one of our calls here, you want to add to this, annotate it, tag it, or Heiner, please go on.
Well, what Eric was saying just was ringing a bell. It is my life since 36 years. So how to really bridge scales, proportions, consequences, but mindsets. And I was a metadatabase expert, to speak your technical ontology and programming language. I was a metadatabase expert in a UN G7 OECD project in the late 80s. Can you believe that? We had a mandate with UN G7 OECD to harmonize information, not standardize compatibility, but comparability, harmonizing information. They just made it homogenization because these were lawyers and economists and whatever kind of people. But I was thrown into the pond of sharks, metadatabase experts, and we did a lot of work on that. What you're picking up here now, I mean, I don't want to see senior or junior or whatever, but I feel we have a common thread there. And this cognitive extensional use of space and putting alphanumerics into context is something where this group, where I studied Tom in detail, is really extraordinary, and Fraude bringing it across the scales. I called it micro, meso, macro, or the local, regional, global. We called it later Gloker, but nobody understood us. It's something like a very special group, and maybe we find a time for a very short session, or I sent you some videos. I'm presently struggling with BART and now Gemini with Notebook on how to make the incompatible, imaginary, and impossible real.
That reminds me of something, and I'm grateful. Just writing something in our comments there. Timur, please go on.
Yeah, I was just thinking about one experiment. I wrote an article. I read an article about. It was about elephants and trying to measure elephants' IQ. And and there was one specialist in zoopsychology who said that you cannot use ape-built IQ test to measure intelligence of an elephant because his basic worldview is not objects in space, but it's coded as olfactory. I mean, how you call it? Different senses, the vibrations and things he smell, and the space and time is coded differently for elephants. So they restructured the IQ experiments and found that intelligence of elephants is built not like it's built in apes. It's like Kant said basic two categories are time and space, but he also said that's it's so for humans. So, and Engelbart, as far as I remember his writings, he said that we can basically rewrite the internal instruments that were built by evolution. And I think it's not about only cultural evolution, like special locations and placing knowledge in space, because we are as apes, I mean, like it's higher apes, Catarini and Homo, as a descendant of Catarini, a family, we know how to navigate in space, and memory works good with space because we handle objects and attributes in space and time. But the question is, how much human instruments we are going to use? Don't we want to try something else? Probably go beyond the human Umwelt and try instruments that move us into different kinds of cognition and to different kinds of instrument building.
That is so important, Timur. And I'm going to, for a moment, go almost the opposite to really help make your points. Have a look at this, guys. So this is a table in Author. All word processors have a table, right? But here's the thing. When I had programmers before this, to have a good table and author was actually really hard to implement. Apple almost fought us against it, API wise, right? But the reason I'm bringing it up now, while we were chatting earlier, I copied something across, and when you copy from a markdown file, it doesn't render as an active table. So I asked Claude to do that, and it built in author a way to parse markdown and present it as a real table. Right? That is incredibly sophisticated stuff. Why am I showing that now? Partly because it got done right before Timur was talking, but also almost anything that we can think with just text, because Timur was talking much wider, and Heiner was also talking much wider. We can, pardon my French, we can bloody well do now. Right? The magic we can build on when you paste something, do this craziness to it. When you copy this, do this craziness to it. There's almost no limit. So even though this is the future of Text Lab, yes, we should look at elephants and vibrations. Yes, we should look at completely different ways, because the whole point is to increase empathy, understanding, communication, and have a better rock going through the space to live on, right? That's why we're doing this, right? We're living in a time of absolute, with all respect, of magic. Peter.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about metadata and tag systems in all of our different apps, and they all basically just give you one bucket of tags. And in a lot of them, they'll even go and automatically alphabetize the tags, which can be incredibly irritating if you're encoding semantics in the order that you apply the tags to the item. So lots of times I'll basically like build sentences with tags if I'm in an app that keeps the tags in the order that I attach them, unless I manually drag them around to reposition them. But then one of the apps I was using suddenly like switched to automatically alphabetizing the tags. So suddenly I lost the ability to have that level of encoding, because suddenly everything was just going to throw all the tags in an alphabetical sort for me, destroying the whole point of leveraging the tag system that way. So maybe what we need are multiple name tag sets instead of just raw tags, but everybody just defaults to, we'll throw tags in, that's the easiest high level thing. But now with the tools, it might be easier to add that secondary level of abstraction.
Yeah, we definitely need more ways to deal with tags, for sure. And tags are, of course, one valuable way to deal with our knowledge. I mean, Dini, with Sloan, the work we were doing, Peter, she talked a lot about annotation, and her annotation was a bit different. She's in the humanities. You basically write in another document, but the way we, yeah, do you all have the same feeling when you're reading a paper book or document, the way you can scraggly line underline something rather than a light underline has semantic meaning for you? Right. So how we choose to tag something, whether it's on a physical thing or digitally, it is woefully underrepresented in terms of opportunities. But come on, guys, we don't have that many minutes. Timur talked about elephants. Where else can we go? What can that stir in our minds?
Well, it triggers for me the idea elephants never forget, but I was looking at a book and it has all these dead links, a book by Ted Nelson, dead links from the 1990s. So why are we forgetting?
You know, I think there's an issue with AI models having to forget. I mean, you end up with this perpetual accretion, and the way you forget with a model, you start with a clear context, and hopefully it won't apply invalid data, but given your context, given the way that the tokens match up. But eventually, you know, a model from 10 years ago, 10 years from now, will it have a lot of AI slop in it? Will it have a lot of good stuff, bad stuff? What kind of responses you get out of it? And how could you validate it? But how do you forget is going to be a problem. because now everything's been encoded. It's like the Matrix. Everything's frozen in 1990, or everything's frozen in 2022, or whatever. And our knowledge base, as we grow, it's going to get a lot more sloppy, humans and AI.
It's already sloppy.
Well, it's always been sloppy. Just the rate of slop increases to
And
d-slop, dx, dt.
ever since we took the and this is not a good thing necessarily, but ever since we took the filters off of you have to publish it and put it in a library for anybody to pay attention to it, that that is was it reduced the gatekeepers. So, I firmly believe that all of the movements that we've had come out of the woodwork in the last decade have always been there, but they had no voice and the internet gave them voice in a way that was impossible before because the editors would ignore the book about LGBTQ plus or whatever because they could, it's a very small percentage of the population. And so, or, Black Lives Matter or pick your group, right? Um, but at the same time, when you do that, you of course open up the door to sloppiness. Again, my Mein Kampf reference, he still had to find a publisher. you know. And nowadays I could write Mein Kampf and put it up there and it would just be my reputation on the line, right? I'm not going to do that, by the way, just so I'm clear on that matter.
I was thinking about elephants earlier. So when we were talking about elephants, elephants have this, like some of the cool things we've learned about them recently is they're able to apply symbolic thinking. In other words, they're able to give each other unique names. So I think these are signs and symbols that are derived from life and when we do knowledge work, that life link to like the symbols that we use, it needs to be maintained. I think a lot of our problems these days seem to be derived from the way that we trade on signs that seem to be totally removed from material reality. You can look at the relation between Tesla and TSLA as an example here. So I guess my question is like, if we're going to start in like taking in this knowledge work from agents, it's going to be, we need to figure out how to like create guardrails so that those signs are, are still linked to relations. There's a second thought there, but I just trailed off. My mind went in a couple places.
Excuse me, I was just totally confused. This was not just the voice of Frode, but I was fully resonating and ringing with it because my favorite things here is the mammoth and the elephant. And I know all the stories about the Indians and whatever it means around multiple intelligences. This is really an extraordinary group, and I really wonder.
Did we lose you there for a second? Let's see if you reconnect with audio. So Timur,
this is one of the few stuffed animals that remains from my childhood. It happens to be an elephant.
But I guess the question is like, what morphologies give rise to symbolic thinking? And how do we integrate those while also like figuring out which ones are just like removing that relationality, like that derived of being in a world. Like I was just listening to like a discussion on Baudrillard being relevant here recently, which I don't have in front of me to reference, unfortunately.
Yes, these are all constructed realities. I mean,
there's a very popular, at least in Russia, book. It's called "How the Forests I think, by Eduardo Kohn. It had 3 editions during 1 year. It's traditional anthropology or non-human anthropology. It's Viveros de Castro line, if you know. It's about how Peirce's semiotics are applied to evolvement of different species in jungle around Brasilia or somewhere. So it's multi-species cognition book. So when I was talking about elephants were just an example of some pattern of cognition. And the question was, do we plan and create projects for human or ape-based cognition with objects that we grasp and place in space and time? Or do we actually embrace Engelbart's vector that was definitely pointing, I think, somewhere beyond? I would place my bet on this vector that goes beyond cognition that we were put into by evolution. I think we can do more. It's not about just smells or vibrations or whatever, or ultrasound, I don't know, affordances pick up. It's not about umwelts that are different for different species. It's about the space that's been folded into different cognitions and then been folded by these cognitions into different instrument specs. So that's about development of ideation and understanding and relations, not about like just new instruments for ape mind, I would say. That's at least my hypothesis of what we are doing here. I don't know if I'm right.
Thank you both. And Heiner, back to you.
Okay, so I speak up. Timur, I really...
Oops. Connection issue.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you guys a very specific question. Let's say we are wildly successful in our theories, practice, and systems that we make. What is the problem we want to solve? What is the goal state? What is the end state we would like to achieve? It can be poetic, it can be engineering-wise, it can be whatever the heck you want. Eric, starting with you, because you're my top left.
Okay. I have been inspired by Ted Nelson's ideas of docuverse, Xanadu, zigzag, and I think there's something valuable in that structuring of knowledge that can have value to the world if it's implemented in a way that's obvious, easy to use. If we can handle all the mechanics on the back end and have a nice spatial view of structures where it's really practical for people to start building their knowledge sculptures.
That's very nice. And Peter, Demetrius, you're next.
There's 2 things I get off this conversation. I'm just riffing on it. Is what we're going to try to do with it. I mean, right now, are we trying to recreate the ape mind without the ape? The environment is missing from these AIs, and we're doing something entirely new. It's a new environment that they live in, and it's going to go in different directions. And, emergent behavior will be different than humans on savannas hunting and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what the intelligence happens. But we're kind of what do you want to get out of that? There's the idea of having the knowledge sculptures and sharing our knowledge sculptures. It gets to be kind of hippy dippy kind of stuff, like some Second Life universe where we're going to have a VR thing and walk around and see each other, and maybe we'll be in real life. We'll do it together. How well that works out. But I think the problem's going to be is the same thing with every other kind of field, from nuclear power and weapons and whatnot. Is we've got our stick and we're going to poke it at things. So we got our feral side and our intellectual side keep it at odds. So, I mean, assuming we stick around, I think we will. I think we'll navigate through it just as we muddle through everything else. Um, but we're going to have all these problems to solve, and I think the kind of things we're doing here to visualize relationships is going to be interesting, so that our intuition can interoperate with all the things that AI is going to do. That's going to be kind of alien but useful, because they're a different thing. If you treat them as entities and you think they're like intelligence and AGI and singularity kind of stuff, or if they're just useful tools that happen to be more sophisticated than we thought they could be. The simple techniques they're doing are, it's amazing things work as well as they do. It's amazing the dog is talking at all, quite frankly. I mean, and if you cease to be amazed by that, I think there's an issue you got to watch out for. That we start fooling ourselves. And
It's an amazing that I can get on an airplane and come visit you in a few hours, Peter. I mean,
yeah,
if you think about it in the context, right?
I mean, so we're going to do similar things with this technology in terms of transmuting ideas to each other, good ideas and bad ideas, ideologies and awful things as well.
Just want to hang on to a point you made there, Peter, before we move on. By the way, Tom, you're next. Is when I went to Syracuse, where Peter Basilko also went, we had a professor who said, truth kills creativity. I haven't been able to find out who it was. I've done research every couple of years. What he meant by that is, once something is true, you just don't look for alternatives of what it could be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And AI presents information as truth. That's why I want to keep it away from my son, except for the most basic things. What Timur is building is a continuous, what the heck is this machine? If I may oversimplify, right? The notion of truth, I mean, if you look at certain political movements, let's not name any of them, but once they become really obsessed with the label that they are under, that becomes their truth, right? So whatever we're building has to help us and others continuously reevaluate that. So Peter, thank you for sparking that. Tom, over to you. What do you want out of this?
Well, I mean, I come from, I mean, I'm a self-admitted constructivist, postmodernist in a sense that I don't believe in truth. I think truth is a negotiated thing. And that depending on who you are and, where you are, your truths can be very different. The link I put in there in the chat is to Benedict Anderson's Imagine Communities, which is kind of the classic in this area. But this is a negotiated process. I mean, what we're doing right now is a negotiated process. We're defining terms that we don't have words for. We're arguing about what words mean. We're defining within the context of this group what we think is the truth. Of course, one of the problems is that we can't ever seem to come to, hey, no one's here to smack us over the head and said, okay, we're going to take Eric's version of the truth and that's it. Which is a good thing. As you said, the truth kills creativity. So to me, part of the trick with using AI is that I think one of the reasons that I find it so useful is that I've never accepted it as truth. And I've always looked at it as a way of getting at multiple truths. And that's the problem with our education systems these days, is because there's a truth that's in the textbook and the answers are in the back, and we all know that's bogus. And that kills creativity right there. That is exactly why our education system is broken. So to me, it's about understanding other people's truths is the most important thing I think that we can get out of these tools. Because I'm always fascinated by, I don't understand what's going on in other people's brains most of the time. That may be me, but I'm fascinated by trying to get inside other people's heads, especially creative people. One of my favorite kind of documentaries to watch is documentaries about how creative people do creative process, how they work through problems, and where did Frank Zappa get these ideas for his music, or what's that one called? about 10 years ago about Tim's Vermeer is an amazing film too, because it's all about he's trying to discover a truth that's been hidden, but the process at which the mechanical process, the creative process he has to go through in order to build a machine that basically does what Vermeer did, um, is really interesting, and so he is trying to dig into what the underlying truth is. We can't say definitively at the end of the movie that this is exactly what Vermeer did, but man, the clues are there. So yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the problem with AI. Actually, is it's a rabbit hole maker, uh, and I think I commented on this when I wrote my paper for the symposium last year. Is that I thought, I'm going to use the AI to help me with research, and that'll save me all this time, and it did the opposite because it opened up all of these cans of worms that I'm like, oh yeah, you should include this. Oh, you should include that. And I'm like, I'm Froda said I should stick to under 4,000 words. If I go into this whole subject area, then there's no way in hell I'm keeping this under 4,000 words. And that's where we have to come in as curators and editors.
Yeah.
That's the human element again. But
That's
we're also putting our finger on the scale when we do that.
That's important, Tom, and thank you. Just briefly, Peter Demetrius, you wrote here, AI didn't kill creativity, just exposed how little we had. We all know Doug Englebart's statement of somebody said, just a dreamer. Dreaming is hard work. Creativity and dreaming is very hard work. So thank you for that. And Peter Masulko.
Suko, go.
Okay. I'd like us to get away from there's an app for that, super focused tool models, and get back to general tools, to see more of the emphasis come back to people as individuals instead of just, we're just going out consuming content now instead of creating content. And we're dependent upon someone, again, building a custom tool for every single purpose. I want to get back to Doug's world of an open-ended infrastructure with lots of rich functionality that can be combined in interesting ways.
Brief and very to the point, and I fully agree. That's why I think the substrate is so important, metadata is so important. So 100%. Now there's just Timur and Astral. So Astral, you're next if you don't mind. What
Would you mind
would you like
restating
to
the
chat
question?
about? Yeah, the question is, it's very easy to get kind of wound up in the cool tools and philosophical aspects, but in a deep way, what the heck do we want out of this? If we manage to build through theory or implementation, whatever, what problem are we solving? Are we making a faster computer or a better thinking thing or whatever it might be? I wonder what your perspective is, what your dream is.
So I would like to have a tool, a system that allows us to identify resources, gather resources, and give us agency in our material world to deploy them in ways that allow us to pursue positive self-discovery for our people, for ourselves, for each other. And like we need to have like ecological constraints so we recognize how those tools are applied and are affecting our worlds. The knowledge that we're building together. I'm trailing off because I didn't mean to use that word. Let's say I guess the context that we build needs to be linked. I'm looking for an aggregator. I'm looking for something that gives me the reference to the stuff that matters to me in my environment, and also gives the, hey, these are the resources that you can use towards your dreams right now. And these are the repercussions that maybe we can perceive based on the implementation of these dreams.
Lovely, thank you. Also, by the way, as always, if in between sessions you have anything you want to add to the record, just email me or whatever. I'll be very, very happy to put it on the page. And it may even make it into our song. Timur, what are you trying to make with all these things? You're building a lot. So I'm wondering, do you even have a clear vision, or are you very much experimenting and lighting the torch as you go?
I'm experimenting, but I thank you for this question. It was actually, I haven't been thinking about this for a long time, but now it's the good time to ask this question. I would say something like this. Henri Bergson, a philosopher, he told once that we as people with the rational mind are disconnected from the vital flow because rationality it makes time and space into different objects and time moments. So we are lonely because we are not connected to their life flow. So, and I think that this kind of work with interfaces can be the tool to bring about this loneliness, because before that we had only lobotomy or something like this as a way to return back to not mind. But I think we can use this knowledge work to transduce the limits of the knowledge somehow of rationality, and come back to this connection and actually see that we were never alone, because there are lots of intelligences in everything. In animals, in nature, everything, and it's this sense of disconnection and separateness can be brought down with if we are dreaming, because it's not about composing texts or even communicating some ideas from one separate entity to another. I think there's some bigger stuff behind this. So it's about this returning connection to the deep and to the flow, and basically to the real time, the lifetime, vital time, and vital space, but through some kind of knowledge work. I think because of this liquidity and flow, it basically changes the situation with different ideas and different symbols that are separated from each other. They're written down, and they like break the world into a broken space of semantics. I think this liquidity, if it goes alone, and some of this liquidity uses agents to move and to to make this texture alive, I think we can go back to this pre-human mind state of understanding the world, but still being able to think and being able to communicate. I think it's some kind of... So I really believe that if we work into this vector that has been shown also by Engelbart, what you are doing, then we can actually one day understand that we were never alone, really. That's it.
Very, very cool and interesting. And question, first of all, Timur, please write the philosopher's name. I didn't really catch it. But in listening to all this, first, a relatively superficial, trivial question. Have you all tried Persian food? Like Persian grills and Persian salads? Probably have, right? If not big deal. But the thing is, I'm wondering if what we really underlying all of this, we're building something to counter strong men, usually men, not always. I mean, Timur is in Russia, right? Old close friend. Putin is an absolute something or other. Other political leaders, not too brilliant these days. The technological trillionaires, not altogether the best people in the world. Yet here we are. Of course, we all have a lot in common, but we are trying to get to a point where we can have a passionate disagreement, argument, grow, and get somewhere. But what we, as a planet right now, what we're really struggling against is a few people with an inordinate amount of communication power as well as financial power. So maybe what we're trying to build in a way is a way for people to think and connect collectively in a way that has real effect. Right now, what we're doing may be interesting for people in 100 years as an archival meeting, but we haven't really gotten to the point of changing the world yet. And in my experience, people who are very strongly of this and that opinion it doesn't take that much to sway them, right? They need to meet someone of the opposing opinion. And first of all, this is a human. Secondly, if it's a cultural thing, have dinner. Their food probably tastes really nice, whatever it is. And then when there is a discourse and a disagreement, to have it in an environment where they feel safe. We talked about that a lot. And one of the magical things about text, of course, is a lot of your personality is left behind when you write, which can be very empowering, and it can also be horrible when people write horrible things online. But if we don't manage to get back to the basic humans, and we just have these few megalomaniac people throwing the planet off balance, we may have a problem. Astral, please. Astral, are you available?
Mic check. There, I'm here. Okay. So
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. I think the feedback about how we were talking earlier about like how like interfaces could be generated. I think feedback from like how we feel our systems are working as we are in them may be the most crucial feedback point that we can try to build our systems to collect. Like this, like people are not going to be able to read the technical details, but they can tell you if the weather feels nice. And this kind of like feedback, I think, with the right frameworks may allow us to help build systems that reframe around how people that are actually exhibiting or actually can have feedback about how our systems work.
Mm-hmm.
Can have agency. That's a bit of a word salad, but I think I got it out there.
I think that's very related to what you're talking about, Tom, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, these are the relationships are constructed, and we bring baggage with us, and the toughest thing is to get rid of our baggage enough so that we can obtain that other perspective, and that's really tough. Um, it's I've spent a lot of time going all the way back to my political science days. The very first scholarly article I ever had published was on ethno-nationalism and how elites within those societies construct the reality of the people who, this was during the Yugoslavian wars, uh, that how the elites construct these mythologies within societies and how they go about doing that and how that influences very negative outcomes in many cases. And we've seen already, I mean, in the last decade, how this has shifted in so many different countries, not just the United States, of what we find is acceptable democratic behavior, so to speak. And that is a conversation, that is an elite driven thing, that the conversation or the lack of one that is driving that. And so that's the thing where I think technology offers a very disruptive capability. We just have to be willing to grasp it. The one thing I think is the big failure from the early days of the internet is that we thought that's what the internet was already going to do. And it does for those of us who know how to look at it. But for the vast majority of people, it doesn't seem to have made a difference, or it's made it worse because the amount of information out there is just an overload. I don't have time to read every article on Wikipedia. I don't have, so I'm just going to do what, Trump or Putin or whoever says. And they know better than I do. Right. So that's the biggest problem in the world today. It's that we refuse to construct our own narratives.
Well, it's interesting you should say that particular point. And by the way, if you guys are okay, we'll go off past today. So we have a 2-hour session. It's just too brilliant. And of course, if you need to leave early, that's of course okay. But I do honestly believe we need more religion. I know it's an extremely unpopular thing to say, especially in our generalized kind of situations. But if you look back at the founders of the all the major current religions, what does it come down to? What's a Jew? What's a Muslim? What's a Christian? If you look at the origin, it's someone who says, "Be nice to other people," and find out what that means. That's what they say. right? There's been a lot of crud and little people putting stuff on top of it. And the reason I say it, Edward O. Wilson also wrote a book that's a letter to a preacher or a pastor or whatever it's called, saying, if you don't care about the climate, if you believe in a God, why are you disrespecting the God's creation, right? And I'm not saying we should all start talking about some kind of a God in this community, not at all. But we cannot engineer our way out of these problems that we have in the humanity situation. It has to be something related to our feelings and our spirit. I know I'm again preaching to the choir. This is nothing new to you guys, but I am wondering how we can help with these tool things we're building to get closer to that. Eric, please comment on that, and then I may have something else to show you guys.
So I'd like to relate what you just said to something from last week where there was discussion about bad actors in a community and where the community devolved and it was all about leaderboards and weapons. And so now I'd want to contrast that with a community from the 1990s, which was a multi-user dungeon that was used in schools. And it taught kids how to write, how to build their own worlds. And it was new, exciting. And what was so special about that was there were rules established up front that this was going to be a nonviolent place and that the kids would be mentored and helped, and you had the people who would moderate it. So that's like a covenant form of community that was established. And so I say that if communities can agree on the rules and build in that way, then you'll have these pockets developing around the world. And it's really at a local level where it matters. The more that people can get together locally and solve their own problems, regardless of what they're living under. That's my vision.
I mean, part of the, yeah, so agree with you. I mean, part of the problem is I used to be one of these people saying, we shouldn't buy aircraft carriers, we should have more schools. But now the reality of the world is we kind of need both. That's awful, right? That is really awful. And one of my closest friends I've known since childhood, who went to the military and worked in intelligence, has shown some of the geopolitical stuff about countries that are not relevant to us in our discussion, but other countries, what is actually going on. Because of this stupid leaders on top with their egos and crap, right? So how do we give the citizenry better access to information and communication, and how can we get closer? And D&D, Tom, thank you. Please read that out. And then Astral, I think you were about to say something. Please say after Tom. Thank you.
The D&D is all about constructing realities. That's why so many tech innovators play D&D in their use. I will say that what you're talking about is deeply threatening to the systems that exist out there at a whole bunch of different levels. I mean, I deal with this at an educational, institutional level, and messing with their reality is dangerous, to say the least. I don't think dangerous is the right word, because frankly, it's not going to get me shot, but it could get me ostracized, and to a certain extent it has. And the one thing I have at this point is I really don't care, because I'm going to do my thing, and I'm not going to play your stupid politics. But this is a problem across education. This is a problem in politics. These are deeply entrenched systems, and I encourage people to read up on systems theory. On Donella Meadows, Designing in Systems is one of the classics there, but there are many others. Because the problem, we think this is all great, and in the safe zone of this meeting, we can explore these ideas, very freely because we're not threatened by them. But when we start pushing it to the rest of the world, you have to be very strategic when you're and recognize the systemic reactions that happen. And so because they will shut you down.
You're absolutely right. And speaking as someone who I've lost so many people to cancer, I have to say that innovation in the beginning is very much like a cancer. There isn't a lot of people who actively want to shut you down, but systemic. If it doesn't go with the system, it is seen as a cancer, right? Until the cancer is useful, then it becomes another limb, an extension. Then it's accepted, right? We are now in the horrible stage and the difficult stage of trying to do things that are seen by the systems as being that most horrible, awful thing. So our job is exactly what you say, Tom. We have to provide something useful, demonstrably useful. The only way.
But we also have to clothe it in a way that looks like it's doing what they're already doing. So what I'm building right now, for instance, is this reasoning loop idea that you can basically elevate people's levels of thinking through a recursive method using AI to get them to a point where they're willing to accept alternate realities, to create them themselves, and so on and so forth, which is something education has done a lousy job of over the years. But it claims to do it, especially higher education. We teach critical thinking. Well, okay, you can believe what you want, but I'm going to show you how to teach critical thinking. And if you don't like it, you tell me why this isn't, doing exactly what you say. And that's really the key is to use their own systemic philosophies against them. So if we're talking about the free and open flow of information, well, there are some societies where that's considered very dangerous, but there are other societies where it's considered an ideal. And so how do you lean into that in such a way that people can't argue against it without looking completely hypocritical?
Well, so that is a really important question because the word free has so many meanings, obviously. And information cannot exist by itself. Information only exists in context.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about what we probably mean as free flow information is information needs to come through some kind of cultural context. Like you talked about Mein Kampf earlier. There's nothing wrong with people reading Mein Kampf, but they should bloody well know what it's all about, where it comes from, and its history. It's not an instruction guide, it's a warning, right? I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. But then, of course, someone of a different philosophy might say the opposite of what I just said. And a lot of the benefit of having the editorialized media and curated we talked about earlier is choosing our sources, of course. Now, I'm running a thing in the background here to show you guys. I hope it'll be finished before we run out of time.
How can we mess with people's contexts without threatening them?
Game design. If there's a really good one of my favorite developers is Hideo Kojima, and he's been producing media that is really like it's meant to like shape your perception of your environment, but he does it from a perspective like if you tell someone they're going to learn a lesson from the game, they won't learn it.
Yeah.
And it's that if we want to talk tactics, that's a part of it. So it's about like giving people the lessons that they construct from their environment for themselves and own it themselves.
Yeah, one of the most interesting applications of Second Life back in the day that I ever saw was that someone had constructed an environment where you were essentially you were shown from the perspective of schizophrenic what the world looks like. And it was immersive, and you were a schizophrenic without actually having to go through all of the other problems of being a schizophrenic, but you understood it in a way that is impossible to understand at a distance. You can read all about it all day long in a textbook, but until you live it, it's really hard for you to adapt to that reality. And I think there's real possibilities, particularly with AI and I mean with XR, to exactly what's it like to go through life as something that you're not.
So
I think a question that I have is like, how do you get people to start thinking about playing like a child does again? Like, as another context, we have kids,
Don't
people with
educate
children
them.
here. Well, you can have like, if you start using curse words in your household, the kids start thinking structurally around like why those words exist and start using them themselves.
Mhm.
I need to show you this. Dave Millard, whom most of you have been introduced to, a friend, also my professor when I got my PhD, a most brilliant guy. He wanted the AI to be able to use the virtual space like a human. This is not that, but it's related. So if I click on the AI button, you can type in any kind of a request. Here are some pre-done ones. So I'm going to just do this. So now it interprets the request, goes online, and here we have results in 3D. Whether 3D is relevant or not, I don't know. But if it's the same time, you can do this kind of stuff. So let's add another one. Tokyo temperature and the Nikkei. Here's this. Anybody have a type of data you would like to see? Any kind of data in the world that could be quantitative. Just tell me. Let's do it. Let's see if it functions.
Intensity of sun magnetic field.
How many inches of rainfall in the last 24 hours?
Okay, hang on. Solar magnetic activity over the last 2 years. That's a big one. So let's see. Is it raining a lot in New York, Peter?
We had heavy rain yesterday. Now it just looks like it's ready to rain any second, but it seems to be holding off.
Okay, so for some reason it couldn't do that. This is
It
something
affects the whole planet.
this was built while we were talking just now. That's the point of it. And here is the prompts.
How about something like number of computers per person?
I don't think it got it because I said I'm going to demo it to you guys. I want to show you what I wrote. I said, tell me a range of questions I can ask and give me a text entry dialogue. So I can do a demo in front of the lab right now. So it says, demo mode, let me do 3 things fast. 1, put tappable example questions right in the dialogue. 2, smoke test the features on the device before you do it live in front of people. And 3, launch the app, right? This was done over 10 minutes, right? That's kind of the main point here. So crazy, right? Of course, this runs now equally well on iOS and in the headsets. You can overlay them, you can walk through them. Can we delete things? Yeah, we can, but I deleted the wrong. Oh, it even has persistent undo. How cool is that? Anyway, I just wanted to open that up as a non-effortful thing for help our spatial thinking. And Astral, gamification is a
Start recording.
Oh,
Not gamification.
no, exactly. Gamification is something I'm not a big fan of. You do this and you get points. What that was what I was going to highlight. What you're talking about is experiences, which is
Mhm.
much more interesting and much deeper and gets you in many more
I
interesting
think,
ways.
yeah, we need to separate play from game. And like, so maybe we're talking about, I'm serious play design is kind of the framework I'm working from.
Yeah.
But, and then we construct games from the way we play, and that those games then become codified. But games have a funny capacity to create abstract tokens that really mean nothing except for collecting more tokens, and that's a bad loop to be under.
Yeah,
That's
that's not a
sometimes really fun to
construction.
play
Then
in.
you're living with someone else's construction, and I would agree that I don't I honestly don't like the term serious games because it implies
Mhm.
not fun. I think that again, D&D being an example of a game where it is a serious game, but it doesn't look like one because you're building things, constructing things all the time. And I think with video games as well, anything that is open-ended that allows you to construct your environment is really interesting. I mean, that's why Minecraft is what it is. Minecraft is a good example of that.
A great book came out recently about constructing play for international relations out of King's College called Politics of Play by Aggie Hurst. And I've been just pouring through the references of it because it's filled with a lot of good stuff.
By the way, guys, in closing, you should see what I'm doing because it's just right up what we're doing. I forgot to share screen, but so this is a normal author document. The view you just saw, I exported it as a PNG, so it's on the desktop. I dragged it in, and now I'm going to, obviously I've saved it, I'm going to export it as an EPUB, not setting anything specific, but on the desktop. So first of all, in here, I should now be able to, yeah, that does that. Okay, there's the Zappa that you posted. Let's not, okay, so here we go. This is a normal flat EPUB. Just to verify, not that you don't believe me or anything. Sorry, I'm trying to do something else. Open it in Apple's. So here it is. That's all there's in there. Not very exciting when you view it there, but if you view it in the knowledge space, you click on it, open source. Yeah, it didn't fully work, but that's the plumbing that I'm working on to have it be able to then open up the 3D so you don't just have this static graph thing, you can interact with it. I'll make it work by Monday.
Have a great week, everybody. Good session.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Astro,
Bye.
you just cost me money because now I've got to read that book too.
Yes.
See you.
This is one of the more expensive meetings I go to because I have a stack of books that I've gotten over the years with this.
You're very lucky Mark Anderson is not here. He always has a new book every meeting.
Oh yeah, no, I've gotten a few
Yeah,
off of
but-
Mark over the years.
He'll
So
be here again soon.
I would love to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, look forward to
yeah,
Monday.
that
Thank
means
you,
I got to
guys.
read it too. Bye.
Bye.